In this video, I'd like to play a bit more with the basic ring modulator feedback patch that we explored in the last video, but add a couple different elements into the feedback path. This patch is inspired by Jaap Vink. Vink was a researcher and engineer at the Institute for Sonology in Utrecht, and during his time there, he interacted with a lot of composers who are sort of important to the cybernetic, very interesting avant-garde music at the time. So that means Roland Kane, but also Leo Cooper, Gottfried Koenig, and others. All of the music that came out of the Institute for Sonology in the 60s and early 70s I find really inspiring and really fascinating. And they used a large collection of electronic equipment, some of which was designed by Vink himself in order to make music. So they weren't really using the surge, but the surge I have found the closest sort of analog to some of the things that they were using. Vink also made his own music, one song of which, Screen from 1968, you can find on the Philips Electronic Panorama box set. I say you can find it, it's kind of a hard record to find and quite expensive if you do find it. But luckily Vink's music, not just that track, but a lot of other work of his up through the 80s was reissued on the Recollection GRM series. This patch in particular was sketched out by one of Vink's students, Kees, Tazelaar, who also has done a great amount of music, both in collaboration with the GRM, at the Institute for Sonology, and others. But anyways, let's get into the patch. So we'll set it up just like we did last time, largely. A sine wave from the PCO into the ring modulator, and then we'll just take the ring modulator output straight to the stereo mixer. So you can hear as I turn the ring modulator towards away from ring modulation and down to just hearing the signal. You can hear that sine wave. But let's do some other things. So in this patch, we want to, in the feedback path, use a compressor, reverb, delay, and filter. So first we'll do the compressor bit. So as before, we're going to make an audio compressor, taking the output of the ring modulator, so this is the start of the feedback path, and we'll go into the dual slope generator with a fast attack and medium fall for the typical envelope following that we've done now in a couple patches. And we'll take that output, go into the CV processor just to be able to invert it, and take that inverted output and go into the voltage control input of the top section of the wave multipliers. In a previous video, we used the middle and bottom sections of the wave multipliers, but the top is the more straightforward one. It has an input, an output, and voltage control. In the low condition, you have a pretty basic VCA. In the high condition, it overdrives quite a bit, and you can get some nice distortion effects. But we're just going to use it as a VCA, so we'll take this feedback path and go in here. And I'm going to take the output and run it actually over to a Eurorack system because I do not have a reverb in the surge. But I'm going to take the output and go into the Doepfer A199 spring reverb. It's a very basic spring reverb unit. And that'll be our reverb in the feedback path. For the delay, I don't have any delay here. I don't have a delay in Eurorack, and I don't have a delay in the surge. Unfortunately, I do not have a Wilson analog delay. Maybe one day I will. But to simulate delay, I'm going to use the Doepfer A125 phase shifter. We played in the last video with using the variable Q filter and its outputs and the 90-degree phase shift between those outputs to get interesting phase relations in the feedback path. But here I'm just going to use the phase shifter in which I can just control and have control over the entire 360 degrees of phase shift, not just these sort of quantized 90-degree outputs. And then from the phaser output, I'm going to go back into my little 3.5 millimeter to banana jack converter and come back in to the surge, and I'll go through a variable Q filter just to get the filter in that feedback path. And I'll take the low pass output and go finally into the carrier input. So hopefully this will start giving us an interesting sound. Let's see. As with any feedback patch, you really have to start kind of playing around with things until they start to take effect. So we open. So you see how we can get a really interesting sound that starts kind of growing and morphing and moving around. One other thing I like to do, and it's another Vink-inspired component here, is start to introduce a little instability into the PCO. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take some white noise and go into another variable Q filter, this one in low pass mode, and just take, or at least this one in low frequency mode, and take the low pass output and go into the volt per octave on the PCO. And this will give just some instability to the PCO. And try to get this sound back. So even there, just playing a little bit with the envelope follower sensitivity gives us a whole wide range of sounds. And just leaving it on its own, the sound will kind of grow and morph and play around. Play a little more with different components. And if I also play a bit with the phase shift in the feedback path, you can see that this patch gives you a whole lot of things to play with. And of course, we can add even more things to the feedback path. We can use feedback to modulate different other parts of the patch, either the initial oscillator or other things. If you are enjoying this video and the other ones I've been doing, I did create a Patreon. I'll have a link in the video description. At the moment, I'm just thinking of it as kind of a tip jar. So if you like it, any support is greatly appreciated. Maybe it'll grow into something more in the future. I don't know. But thanks for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.